Hello, all you plastic model fans out there. This is Dan Leone in Plastic Model Building 101, Part 3. Well, as we mentioned before, what we did in our last previous episodes, we cleaned and washed the parts with Dawn, and we scrubbed them real good. Put the parts and pieces in the dish rack, and then after that, we went ahead and let them dry overnight. And so right now all the parts are dry and clean, and they were also covered and make sure there was no dust or dirt or anything like that settled on top of them. I also want to recommend if you ever want to clean with Polyscale Plastic Prep, this is what I was talking about earlier. Polyscale Plastic Prep. You can put this in your airbrush and you spray this, or I also have some Tamiya thinner X20 X-28 thinner, which is an alcohol-based thinner, and you can spray that on plastic as well too. But personally, I go for the Dawn and soapy water, and let it set overnight. So anyway, all right, we are going to start getting started with our painting and with the interior pieces. This is the airplane we're going to be building here, the Curtiss BF2C-1 biplane. We have given the instructions here, and as you can see, the instructions come with a parts diagram of all the parts and pieces on the sprues here, or parts trees. So anyway, we go through number one, which is the cockpit assembly. And here's the cockpit assembly. As you notice that all the instructions here are in a what you call exploded view drawing, and it shows you exactly where all the parts and pieces go. So, okay. Well, most Naval Air Corps aircraft, Navy and Marine aircraft, should I say, the interiors were painted interior green and zinc chromate. The cockpits were also painted in a neutral gray. So anyway, before we start taking our parts and pieces off, we look at what part numbers that are going to be required. So, here's our parts right here. Here's our parts, and so we'll go ahead and start taking these off. So I have here's my parts nibbler, and we just go ahead and just take off some of the parts, like so. And you also want to be very careful when you trim the parts, because you want to have a little bit of sprue on there, so that way you can trim it off with a knife. You don't want to be careful and trying to cutting off too much of the part. So also you also want to grab the part as well, because you don't want the part to be flying all over the place. Okay. Once we've done that, once we've clipped some of the parts off, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna get our hobby knife, and we're gonna trim off some of the excess. And I have here some of my parts tree here. Here's a nice hobby knife, and we just want to just trim it off like so. And you always want to kind of trim away, so that way you don't have to worry about trimming cutting your fingers or anything like that. So you want to kind of clean the parts up just a little bit. As you can see here, here's some parts right here. Just kind of want to clean the parts up just a little bit. Kind of remove some excessive flash and so forth. Also like to kind of sand the parts down just a little bit too. I have here some coarse a sanding stick right here, and I just kind of like to go back and forth. Kind of sand it down just a little bit. You can see it's real smooth. Kind of smooth it out just a little bit. And I also like to kind of do the sides as well too. Kind of get all the nicks and the burrs and things like that, and leftover flash. Because there's one thing, you want to make sure your parts have a good fit, and also a good bond as well too. All right. All right. Alright, we'll just go along the seat here, kind of clean up the seat up a little bit too. Okay. All right. So right now the parts are calling for different colors. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and start assembling some of the parts. Now, what I like to do as far as doing all the parts and everything, as far as gluing everything and painting, I always like to paint the parts and pieces that are on sprues, because for one thing it makes a great holder as far as painting. But anyway, most people follow the instructions step by step, and that's very good practice to do that. You don't want to skip sometimes you just don't want to skip the instructions, because it's just the little things in between that you got to really pay attention to. So anyway, we'll just continue parts cutting and so forth. Now, as you can see, we have our basic parts and everything. Let's kind of cut this off right here. Like I said, you just gotta make sure all your parts and pieces are cleaned. Okay, get our seat back here. Get that off. And we want to kind of clean this off, clean this up a little bit too. Okay. All right. Now, here's the glues I recommend. Testors, good, the best glue ever. And one thing about this glue is that it comes with a metal tip, so that way you know, because most of the old school glues have is a tube, and believe me, speaking from experience, I've dealt with tubular glues and they come out quite messy. This is it's very precise, and so what we'll do is we'll just put a little bit of glue right here, and we'll put our piece right here. And then after that, we'll glue our seat back. Okay. Alright. Sometimes you gotta finagle with these parts, sometimes you have to finagle with them. And there you have it. Here's our first piece. It's already been built. So, okay. Next time we'll be doing our parts interior painting. And till then, this is Dan Leone, Basic Modeling 101. And this is part 3.